The fight between Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce about her work schedule would lead to the harshest words they'd ever exchanged, but the desperate midnight flight Taylor took to Kansas City would reveal the depth of her love and change how they handled their relationship forever. January 23, 2025, 9:47 p.m. The sound of Travis Kelce's key turning in the front door of their Kansas City home echoed through the quiet house as he returned from another late team meeting. The lights were on in the kitchen, but the rest of the house felt empty in a way that had become increasingly familiar over the past month. Taylor's car was in the driveway, which meant she was home, but Travis knew exactly where he'd find her. Locked away in the home studio she'd set up in their converted guest room, working on her upcoming album with the same intense focus that had made her one of the most successful artists in the world. He set his keys on the kitchen counter and noticed the untouched dinner plate wrapped in plastic that their housekeeper had left for Taylor. It was the third night this week that Taylor had been too absorbed in her work to eat the meal someone had prepared for her. Travis understood that Taylor was in crunch mode. Her new album was due to the label in 6 weeks, and she was perfectionist enough to spend 18 hours a day tweaking lyrics and melodies until every song met her impossibly high standards. He respected her work ethic. It was one of the things he'd fallen in love with about her, but respect and understanding didn't make the loneliness any easier to bear. For the past 3 weeks, their relationship had felt more like being roommates than being partners. Taylor would be asleep when Travis left for practice in the morning, and she'd be working when he got home at night. When they did cross paths, their conversations were limited to logistics. Who was picking up groceries? Whether Travis's mom was still coming for dinner on Sunday? What time Taylor needed to leave for her studio session? Travis grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and walked toward the studio, where he could hear the faint sound of Taylor's voice running through the same melodic phrase over and over again. He knocked gently on the door. "Come in," Taylor called without looking up from her piano. Travis opened the door to find Taylor exactly where he'd expected, sitting at the keyboard in an oversized sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, surrounded by notebooks, coffee cups, and the organized chaos that represented her creative process. "Hey, babe," Travis said, settling into the chair she kept in the corner for visitors. "How's it going in here?" "Good," Taylor replied, still focused on the piano keys. "I think I finally figured out the bridge for track 7. Want to hear it?" Before Travis could answer, Taylor launched into a complex melody that was beautiful but completely unfamiliar to him. As she played, Travis found himself studying her profile, noticing the dark circles under her eyes and the way her shoulders were hunched with exhaustion. "That's beautiful," Travis said when she finished. "But when's the last time you ate something?" "I had a granola bar around 3, Taylor said, already turning back to her notebook to scribble down some lyric ideas. "Taylor, it's almost 10 o'clock. You need actual food." "I'll eat later. I'm in a groove right now, and I don't want to lose it." Travis felt a familiar flash of frustration. This conversation, or some version of it, had been happening for weeks. "You've been in a groove for 3 weeks straight," Travis said, trying to keep his voice light. "Maybe it's time for a quick break?" "I can't take a break right now, Trav. This album is due in 6 weeks, and I'm still not happy with 4 of the songs. The label is breathing down my neck, and I need everything to be perfect." "I get that your work is important," Travis said, "but we haven't had a real conversation in days. We haven't had dinner together, we haven't watched a movie, we haven't done anything that isn't related to your album." Taylor finally looked up from her piano, and Travis could see the exhaustion and stress written across her face. "Travis, you knew what you were getting into when we started dating. This is my job. This is how I work." "I know that," Travis said, his frustration starting to leak into his voice. "But there has to be some balance. You're working yourself into the ground and you're shutting me out completely." "I'm not shutting you out. I'm trying to finish an album." "When's the last time we had a real conversation that wasn't about your schedule or your work?" Taylor set down her pen and turned to face him fully, and Travis could see that his questions were annoying her. "I don't know, Travis. I've been busy. I'm sorry if that bothers you, but this is what my career requires." It bothers me because I feel like I'm living with a stranger, Travis said, his voice rising slightly. You work 18-hour days, you barely eat, you don't sleep enough, and when I try to talk to you about it, you act like I'm being unreasonable for wanting to spend time with my girlfriend. You are being unreasonable, Taylor snapped. You have your football career, and I have mine. You wouldn't appreciate it if I complained every time you had to stay late for practice or team meetings. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Football has a season. There are off days, there are breaks. You've been working nonstop for a month. Because I have deadlines. And I have needs too, Travis said, his voice louder now. I need a girlfriend who's present, who's engaged, who doesn't treat our relationship like it's just another item on her to-do list. Taylor stood up from the piano bench, her eyes flashing with anger. Our relationship is not on my to-do list, Travis. But my career is my priority right now, and if you can't handle that, then maybe you don't. Understand who I am. Maybe I don't, Travis shot back, because the woman I fell in love with cared about more than just her next album. She cared about the people in her life. I do care about the people in my life. When? When do you care about me, Taylor? Because from where I'm sitting, you care about your music, your deadlines, your perfectionism, and everything else comes second. The words hung in the air between them, harsh and cutting in a way that neither of them had intended. You know what, Travis? Taylor said, her voice dangerously quiet. You're right. My work does come first right now, because my work is going to be here long after relationships come and go. I've learned not to depend on anyone else for my happiness or my success. The implication of her words hit Travis like a physical blow. Relationships come and go? Travis repeated. Is that what you think this is? Just another relationship that's going to come and go? I think you're asking me to choose between you and my career, and that's not a choice I'm willing to make. I never asked you to choose between me and your career, Travis said, standing up now too. I asked you to make some room in your life for our relationship. There's a difference. Is there? Because it sounds like you want me to work less, prioritize your needs over my professional obligations, and basically become a different person than the one you fell in love with. I want you to remember that you have a partner who loves you and wants to be part of your life. And I want a partner who supports my dreams instead of making me feel guilty for pursuing them. Both of them were shouting now, years of careful politeness and conflict avoidance exploding into the kind of fight that changes everything. You know what, Taylor? You're absolutely right. Your career should come first. Don't let me get in the way of your next Grammy. Travis turned and walked out of the studio, leaving Taylor standing alone among her notebooks and half-finished songs. Travis, wait! Taylor called after him, but he was already grabbing his keys from the kitchen counter. I need some space to think, Travis said without turning around. Let me know when you figure out whether you want a boyfriend or just want to be left alone to work. The front door slammed behind him with a finality that made Taylor flinch. For a moment, she stood in the hallway listening to the sound of Travis's truck pulling out of their driveway. Then she walked back into her studio, sat down at the piano, and tried to focus on the song she'd been working on. But for the first time in weeks, the music wouldn't come. By midnight, the Nashville rain had started again, drumming against the windows of Taylor's recording studio in a rhythm that matched her restless anxiety. She'd been staring at the same chord progression for 2 hours, but every time she tried to play, all she could hear was Travis's voice saying that relationships come and go. Taylor found herself standing at her window, watching the rain and replaying every word of their fight. The worst part wasn't even the shouting. It was the look of hurt in Travis's eyes when she'd said that her work would be there long after relationships ended. She'd meant it as a general statement about the music industry, about the lessons she'd learned from past heartbreaks. But she could see how Travis had heard it as a direct threat about their future. So Taylor did something that surprised even her. She grabbed her phone and made a call. If Travis needed space, she respected that. but she also needed him to know that she'd realized she'd handled the situation poorly, and that required showing up. "Hey, I need the jet ready," she said when her assistant answered, clearly groggy from being woken up. "I need to be in Kansas City as soon as possible." "Tonight?" "Taylor, it's midnight." "I know what time it is. How quickly can we get clearance?" 3 hours later, at 3:15 a.m., Taylor's private jet touched down at the Kansas City downtown airport. The flight had been quick, but she hadn't slept. She'd spent the entire 90-minute journey in the air staring out the window, replaying their conversation and recognizing all the ways she could have handled it better. The thing was, Travis hadn't been wrong about most of what he'd said. She had been working 18-hour days. She had been shutting him out. She had been treating their relationship like something that could wait until her album was finished. And when he'd tried to talk to her about feeling neglected, she'd gotten defensive instead of listening. By the time Taylor parked her rental car outside Travis's house, dawn was starting to break through the rain clouds around 6 a.m. She sat in her car for several minutes, gathering the courage to knock on his door. This wasn't the kind of conversation you could script, and she wasn't sure how Travis would react to her showing up unannounced after the fight they'd had. Taylor walked to Travis's front door, noting that his truck was in the driveway, which meant he'd come home instead of staying at a hotel or going to Jason's house. She knocked gently, aware that it was early and that Travis might still be asleep. When Travis opened the door, Taylor's heart broke a little. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept any better than she had. His hair was messy, and he was wearing the same clothes from the night before. "Taylor," he said quietly, surprise evident in his voice. "What are you doing here? It's 6 a.m. "I know," Taylor replied, her voice smaller than usual. "I flew in. I needed to talk to you, and I didn't want to wait." Travis stepped back and opened the door wider, gesturing for her to come inside. "You flew here? In the middle of the night?" "I flew here to apologize," Taylor said without preamble, "for how I handled last night, for the things I said, for making you feel like you don't matter to me." Travis closed the door and turned to face her, and Taylor could see that he was still hurt but also surprised by her gesture. "You didn't have to fly here, Taylor. We could have talked on the phone." "No, we couldn't have," Taylor said. "This conversation needed to happen in person, and it needed to happen now, before we both had time to build walls and convince ourselves that we were right." They moved to Travis's living room, settling on opposite ends of his couch with the careful distance of two people who were still raw from fighting. "Travis, you were right about almost everything you said last night," Taylor began. "I have been working too much. I have been shutting you out. I have been treating our relationship like something that could wait until my album was finished, and that's not fair to you." Travis listened without interrupting, his expression careful and guarded. "But the thing that scares me the most," Taylor continued, "is that when you told me I was prioritizing my work over our relationship, my first instinct was to get defensive instead of listening, and that tells me that some part of me knew you were right, and I wasn't ready to face it." "Why weren't you ready to face it?" Travis asked gently. Taylor took a deep breath, knowing this was the hardest part to explain. "Because admitting that I was neglecting our relationship meant admitting that I was scared. This album feels like the biggest risk I've ever taken artistically, and I've been terrified that it won't be good enough. When I get that scared, I have this terrible habit of shutting out everyone I love because I'm afraid they'll see me fail." Travis's expression softened slightly, and Taylor could see that he was starting to understand. "But that's not an excuse for how I treated you," Taylor continued. "You didn't sign up to be ignored and neglected while I work through my own insecurities. You signed up to be my partner, and I haven't been yours." "Taylor," Travis said quietly, "I never wanted you to choose between me and your career. I just wanted to feel like I mattered to you." "You do matter to me," Taylor said, her voice breaking slightly. "You matter to me more than any album I could ever make. And I'm horrified that my actions made you question that." Travis moved closer to her on the couch, and Taylor felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. I think we both handled that fight badly, Travis said. I said some things I didn't mean too. Like what? Like implying that you don't care about the people in your life. That was unfair. I know you care. I was just hurt, and I wanted you to hurt too. Taylor reached for Travis's hand, relief flooding through her when he didn't pull away. I think we need to figure out how to fight better, she said, because this probably won't be our last disagreement, and I don't want to keep hurting each other like this. How do we do that? We remember that we're on the same team, Taylor said. Even when we're disagreeing about something, we're supposed to be working together to solve the problem, not trying to win points against each other. Travis squeezed her hand. I like that. And I need to set better boundaries with my work, Taylor continued. Not because you're asking me to, but because I want to. I want to be present for our relationship, and I want you to feel valued and prioritized. What would that look like? It means I work smarter, not just harder. It means I have dinner with you at least 4 nights a week, even if it's late. It means I don't bring my phone to bed, and I don't check emails during our time together. It means I remember that loving you isn't a distraction from my success. It's what makes my success meaningful. Travis was quiet for a moment, processing what she'd said. And what do I need to do differently? He asked. I need you to help me instead of resenting me when I'm working hard on something important, Taylor said. I need you to ask me how you can support me instead of asking me to work less. I can do that, Travis said. I want to do that. They talked for another hour, really talked in a way they hadn't in weeks. Travis told Taylor about the loneliness he'd been feeling, and Taylor told Travis about the fear and pressure that had been driving her to work such long hours. I think we both forgot how to take care of each other, Taylor said finally. So how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Travis asked. We check in with each other more often, Taylor said. We don't let resentment build up for weeks before we talk about it. And we remember that our relationship is something worth fighting for, not something to fight about. But then Travis asked the question that got to the heart of everything. Taylor, what you said last night about relationships coming and going, did you mean that about us? Taylor felt her heart clench at the pain in his voice. No, she said firmly. Travis, no, that was me being defensive and scared, and I said something cruel because I was hurt. You are not just another relationship to me. You're the love of my life, and I'm terrified that my inability to balance my work and my heart might cost me the most important thing I've ever had. Travis pulled her into his arms then, and Taylor felt like she could breathe properly for the first time since their fight had started. I love you, Travis said into her hair, even when we're both being idiots. I love you too, Taylor replied, and I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter. You matter more than anything. They spent the rest of the morning creating a new plan for how to handle Taylor's intense work periods. She would still work long days when necessary, but she'd make sure to have regular meals with Travis and set aside time for real conversations. Travis would find ways to be supportive during her crunch times instead of taking them personally. They'd both make an effort to communicate better before small issues became big fights. But most importantly, they'd both remember that their relationship was something worth protecting, worth prioritizing, and worth working on even when life got complicated. I can't believe you flew here in the middle of the night just to apologize, Travis said as they made breakfast together in his kitchen. I can't believe it took me this long to realize how badly I was handling things, Taylor replied, but I'm glad we figured it out. Me too, Travis said, pulling her close. Though next time we have a fight, maybe we can resolve it without you having to charter a red-eye flight. Deal, Taylor laughed, but I have to say, there's something romantic about flying across the country to say you're sorry. There is, Travis agreed. Very dramatic. Very you. 3 months later, when Taylor's album was finished and receiving critical acclaim, she would dedicate it to Travis, who taught me that real love means showing up, especially when you don't want to admit you're wrong. And Travis would tell everyone who asked that the best thing about their relationship wasn't that they never fought. It was that when they did fight, they both cared enough to do the hard work of making things right. What do you think about this story of two people learning to fight fairly and love better? Have you ever had a relationship conflict that ultimately made you stronger? Sometimes the most important conversations happen after the worst fights, when two people decide that their love is worth more than their pride. If this story resonated with you and reminded you that real love includes learning how to disagree without destroying each other, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the real work that goes into celebrity relationships. Because sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that show us how to grow together instead of growing apart.